So, nice to meet you. Is it Nick or Nicholas?
Whatever you like. Your friends call me Nick. Parents call me Nicholas when they're angry.
Okay. Well, we'll go with Nick then.
Okay, that works for me.
My name's Guy Moffat. I'm the president of the Portage and District Chamber of Commerce. So I get the honor of having you as my candidate in this car, so we can have a bit of a conversation.
Oh, great.
Yeah. So tell me a bit about yourself.
So I've been politically involved for a while. I've run on a number of campaigns, and I've volunteered previous to that. So I've run in Elmwood provincially, in the Fort White by-election provincially, and now in Portage Lisgar for the federal. I have a construction background, so my career is as a builder. And I grew up Mennonite, so that was like not that was being voluntold that this is
what you're doing today.
Yeah. So power tools very young, and
okay. So where did you grow up then?
I grew up in Winnipeg and Elmwood.
Okay.
I've lived in a few cities throughout my life. I've lived in Calgary, I lived in Vancouver. And there's something about the prairies that always calls. It's such a great place to have a home, to make a home, and the people are great here. I mean, we're not friendly at Manitoba for nothing.
Absolutely.
So this is kind of like a learning thing for me. I'm getting to a better sense of what the rural communities are like, and those distances in between us, especially being from the city, I think is creates a lot of distance politically, and we often, especially lawmakers and politicians and legislators, don't have enough of a good sense of what that relationship is like. We take for granted in the city that food just, there are people in Winnipeg who believe that food comes from grocery stores.
Yeah. And you want to introduce your counterpart?
Sorry, this is Donovan McIntosh. They are the
A lot of titles. Candidate for mostly for the Green Party Manitoba. It's probably the most important one.
Right now, yeah. Also a deputy leader with the Green Party Manitoba. Also the chair of the youth council. Very, very active, very busy, and has thankfully joined me on our little trip to Portage.
Okay.
So yeah, we like to build community like this. So we're back into getting out and getting into the public, and COVID took it a lot out of a lot of organizations, so that's we're excited to be back and doing this.
Yeah, it certainly did. So is this your first time in Portage?
No, I've been through Portage a lot. Like, I have a lot of family in Westman, and my aunt and uncle are well, actually they're just moving, but they've lived here for a couple decades. And
like right in Portage.
In Portage,
so you got family ties to the city.
Yeah, I'm not completely unfamiliar.
Okay, gotcha.
But with family, politics is not always the first thing that comes up if we're all getting along.
Yeah. You're talking about your ties to Portage, right?
Yeah. So so I've been here a little bit as a younger kid. It's been a while since I've been back, but it's been good to get to know people out here and canvassing and knocking on doors a little bit and getting a better sense of what those issues are.
Okay. So you've talked about great people in Manitoba, and some of the best of them are on Portage. So other than the great people, what's some of your most favorite things about Portage?
Well, I mean, we just kind of took a tour. We unfortunately didn't get the full tour of the residential school museum, but that was part of our tour today, and it's great. All of the agricultural, and especially the organic agricultural, and there are a lot of people who are very tied to the land, who are active and want to preserve this. This is a beautiful set of country, great forests and waterways, and we're such a diverse ecology that it's so important to know what those issues are, and just even have a sense of the spirit of the place and the lay of the land, and the sort of civic pride that Portage has about itself.
Yeah.
So that, yeah, it's I mean, there I'm sure a lot of things yet to see and uncover, and we're
one of the things that has always impressed me the most about Portage La Prairie, especially as it sits in Manitoba, I think, and I'm a little bit biased because I'm from Portage.
You're allowed to be.
I am allowed to be. I think we have one of the most diverse growing areas in all of Manitoba. Like within 10 miles of the city of Portage, we have vegetable crops, we have fruit crops, we have animal, like cattle, we've got oilseed, we've got cereal, we've got everything here as far as agriculture goes. So if you were the successful candidate, what are your thoughts? Like, what would you be wanting to promote in Ottawa about agriculture in the West? And Portage Lisgar, more specifically.
Yeah, well,
we don't care about Alberta that much.
I mean, yeah, they can figure themselves out.
That's right.
Well, I think one of the big things for me is right to repair and I think that I think that operates in Winnipeg and anywhere, that we just have to be less wasteful and be conscious of what we're conserving. I think that's like a big and immediate agricultural issue when you have $1 million machine that has to come all the way back. You can't fix it yourself. You can't, and that's the spirit of the Canadian farmer. Really, is we built the farms of this nation off of going out there with. I mean, when people came to Winnipeg, we weren't allowed to advertise that there was snow here. And so there's a bunch of people that said, we're going to stick with it, and we're going to figure out how to make this land prosperous. And so, I think that sort of diminishes that kind of spirit. And that's something that I think is true for, you don't really get into farming unless you have some kind of connection to the land. And so it's important that we support that, and that farms themselves can be sustainable. And I think that also extends to the way we plant crops, the way we treat our soil, the way that that the earth gets to regenerate, the way that our food becomes less nutritious by a constant cycle of chemicals. And so we need to be better at that. I think that going to Ottawa, trying to convince all the politicians that this is the right way is part of the job, but also I think has to come from Portage Lisgar and say, hey, no, we're not. We see that this is unsustainable. We see that this is polluting our waterways. We see that this is contaminating our food supply, and we just don't want that. So we're going to do something else, and we can work with the federal government. We can find ways to fund this and transition into a more sustainable agriculture. But the sad fact about politics is that politicians and political parties rarely move unless there's something coming from the public that's telling them to do so. So don't hope for the government to change things. It's kind of up to citizens to make that first step. And so if I was in Ottawa, I would be bringing all of this community to Ottawa with me, and those voices would sit in the Commons, and we would incite that discussion and make sure that we understand as a country where our food is coming from, and this diverse productivity of agriculture that you're talking about, that's respected, that it's preserved, because that is a big concern, I think, for a lot of people, that the way that we are farming is not sustainable, and we're seeing the environmental effects of that too. Just the way we treat land.
I'm going to switch gears on you a little bit. I don't know if part of your tour earlier you've seen the former Campbell Soup plant. So that used to be one of the leading producers of soup, actually, in Canada. Portage La Prairie, there's a ton of employment that came along with that. And at the time that Campbell's Soup decided that they weren't going to operate the plant anymore, it was quite devastating to our community. So
Mm-hmm.
the next question I've got for you is, what are your thoughts on rural economic development, and how can the federal government help with that? What are some strategies?
So again, this is about, you know, big government listening to small communities. I believe that you know, good governance is really boring and is just a little bit of oversight and direction of funding towards what community needs. So I mean, that's bringing industry into it is, you know, just a matter of figuring out what our resources are, what our skills are, and what the market is, and just connecting it and doing that in a green way. So, you know, if that's you know, transferring those jobs to something that's, you know, it's like solar installations instead of gas fitting. I think that there's I mean, there's plenty of opportunities for us to do that. We know, especially coming from the trades community, we know it's not a matter, just tell us what the materials are, give us the specs, and it'll get built. And Manitobans are well, famous across Canada, at least for that, is, you know, if you want to get a job in any other province, just tell them you're Manitoban. It's like I have full trust in the people of Manitoba that can accomplish all of this, and it's just a matter, I think, of the security to have that transition and know that, okay, so you're going to be trained, and that, you know, that you will probably not be able to work in the same job or doing the same thing, you know, for a period of time, and that, you know, your expenses are going to be covered. That there'll be training budget where people can just feel comfortable in that transition.
So when you look into your crystal ball, excuse me, what is the future of economic development for Manitoba? Like, where are we going to be able to really excel and get ahead, do you think?
Well, I think, I mean, I know Manitoba has a very diverse economy. We're you know, we're very balanced. So I think there's a lot of ways that we can push it, because we already have a lot of base knowledge. We have a lot of skills and programs and institutions. Yeah,
we're part of the bigger machine, right? Like, we're one cog.
Yeah.
So where does Manitoba, where is our driver to help the rest of Canada succeed and have a solid future in growth and economic development?
Yeah, so I coming from a construction background, I see that in housing here.
Okay.
I think we can and should be developing the safest, healthiest, most energy efficient housing in the world. I think we have the climate that necessitates some of that. I mean, we go from the coldest city in Canada to the warmest city in Canada, and sometimes that happens like in a month.
Yeah. So now you open the door.
Yeah.
I'm just going to walk through.
Okay.
We have a lot of First Nations communities within our Portage Lisgar geographic area.
Mm-hmm.
Where does Ottawa, because you're talking about safe, good housing, help me out here.
Yeah, and I know specifically that's and housing is, like, the federal government actually has a decent housing funding strategy. I mean, it's not as complete as I think I would like it to be, or that a lot of people would like it to be. But it comes a lot from the province to orient that. And I'd actually met with the CEO of Manitoba Housing a number of years ago, and they were looking for an in-province supplier for all of the mobile homes that go out in remote reserves, and they were getting that currently from Arizona. And what happens is, when you build a house in Arizona and have no understanding of what cold is or how insulation works, you build houses that get moldy, don't insulate properly, or fire hazards, and you end up in this, you know, like, you've provided a home, but did you really? And there are companies, I worked for a company at the time that was building modular mobile homes, you know, prefab, set up, take it out there. So I think the solution to that is building those programs into those communities. So have people that are trained and have employed skills, that can build houses for their communities, in their communities, and also maintain those houses. And there's Manitoba Building and Trades actually has a program that does that. You know, and I just think this should be a standard thing. Like we need to stop outsourcing that and build up the community with skills. And I think also that gives a sense of, you know, community and pride for the homes and for the community, and say like, hey, you know, I know who built that, and I think that builds better houses. I think people will put more of themselves into it, and, you know, be more diligent and careful, and want to meet all those standards for their community, rather than, you know, someone that we've tendered out and brought in and doesn't really understand the impact that good housing has and the importance of good housing. So it's so for me it's you know, housing and building up those local community skills is how we solve that. It's I think the long-term solution in by keeping skill and employment in the communities, by building up the energy resilience, like I mean, and health, like I said, building moldy houses, and these things only last for a couple of years, and, you know, you wonder why, you know, you see broken down houses sometimes on reserves, and it's because the houses that they were given were not adequate when they were given. So so I think housing is pretty central. I mean, housing is a human right. Housing is something that we can provide and should provide. Providing stable housing and wraparound supports is a better solution for crime, poverty, and security than pretty much anything else we do.
And you just mentioned something else that I'd like to touch on, poverty. So Portage La Prairie, unfortunately, we've got definitely our fair share of poverty and marginalized families here.
Mm-hmm.
Where does that fit into what you'd like to take to Ottawa?
I think that's covered a lot by universal basic income. I think that as a modern, developed nation, we can support. I mean, I know we can support universal basic income. It's a more efficient system for providing for needs, because it doesn't involve as much bureaucracy. I think it's eliminates a lot of you know, crime by necessity. You know, people who are so desperate that this is their best option. I think that's a deterrent to that, and I think, you know, as a playing field leveler. I mean, I think rich and poor should be getting free bus transit, and, you know, should have the same basic level of security in this country, in any riding in this country, in any province in this country.
As the president of the Chamber of Commerce, I'm all for public transit. We have had lots of conversations at our board table about the need and demand for public transit. So you can't do that for a town of 500. So what kind of thresholds are you thinking for public transit?
Well, I think really one of the needs for public transit is intercity transit. So we need to be able to get, you know, like people who are, say, not in the city center need to be able to get to appointments. You know, need to go to the hospital, visit people. Like these are things that are, you know, if you have a car, if you're well off enough to afford gas, are not barriers. But for a lot of people, and especially people who need those appointments, and like, there's no end of red tape and difficulties for people who do not have cars, do not have credit cards, do not have, you know, unreliable access to the internet. These small things that we take for granted so often are like very difficult barriers for people without those kind of things. So, you know, to ease the burden of society, we need public transit that does that. We need equal access, and if equal access means everyone being able to access the same services, just, you know, within proximity to their place of residence, that's a government responsibility. We have to be able to create an environment where either we are so wildly prosperous that universal income is kind of superfluous, or we recognize that we are prosperous enough and that a universal income is reasonable. And I mean, in the end, I think it's also cheaper and more socially helpful. And I mean, I think we have a problem with judgment about these people's lives and what has led them to this. And it's easy to say that from our perspective. Settlers have a different relationship to the economy and the Corporation of Canada, and so we have to understand what that is. And I think in Winnipeg it's a lot of people in suburbs that complain about the panhandlers in downtown Winnipeg, but don't want to pay taxes sufficient to provide any of those social services or even maintain the roads that are in their own communities.
So I don't know if on your other tours of Portage you have ever seen Manitoba Development Center. Have you seen this before?
I have not.
So this was a provincial agency and it housed intellectually and physically handicapped individuals. It's in the process of being closed down right now by the provincial government, allowing these people who have intellectual disabilities and physical disabilities to live in the community, which is wonderful. The downside for us is that we're losing a whole bunch of jobs out of this sector. But my question for you is, tell me about mental health.
I am glad that we as a society are starting to recognize some of those conditions, some of those terms, and a real need for treatment. We don't recognize enough of those root causes, which is again poverty and poor health and lack of access to support services. So I mean, mental health is a big determining factor in a lot of outcomes for people. And again, if we want people to be a positive part of society, and we want them to also have fulfilling lives and not be marginalized, so that means we have to have enough supports, and it is a priority to hire professionals who are trained in social work or trained in Indigenous history and practices, and can be sensitive to that those kind of issues. And we've had enough troubles in Winnipeg about a lot of settler saviors who think that they know what's best for this community and have done more damage because of it.
So where, like a lot of times, mental wellness is a provincial government budget line. So where does the federal government fit into this? Where does the federal government fit into mental health?
Well, I think that it causes a decrease in it very often. I think like getting that to Ottawa is I think it's not something that a lot of that cast really understands, and I think that's part of a product of our electoral system. Like, we are electing professional politicians and lawyers and wordy people, and what we need is people who work on the streets. We need social workers in government. We need teachers, guidance counselors in government, like people who are not more skilled at getting elected than they are at governing. So I mean, that's problematic because not a lot of those people want to be in government, because that's like, you have to talk to people who are very ego driven, and so it's not.
That's a tough question, isn't it?
It is. I mean,
So
these are the people that should probably get some of these mental health services that don't really recognize that.
So we're about to drive past Red River College Polytech, which we're really proud to have in Portage, Prairie as well. and training.
So did this used to be a high school, or
Used to be an elementary school.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I remember long time ago, provincial high school badminton tournament was here. So
Okay.
I played in a few of these gyms.
Awesome. It gets a little bit tricky, right? Because everybody knows that mental wellness of our population is extremely important, and employment and training and skilled labor helps Canada as a whole, and it definitely helps the province, although it falls a lot of time under the provincial budget lines.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of my questions are around, like, where does our federal government fit into this? Because training and education in Manitoba and a skilled labor force and helping to cultivate an entrepreneurial and innovative society is going to help everybody. How can Ottawa help us with that?
Well, I think being in charge of the whole country, I think that gives you the opportunity to not nationalize, but create a transfer system for training. We can train here, we can train there. We'll get a ticket that is interprovincial, so they can set the standards and move provinces towards that. Again, I come from provincial politics, so I usually don't hold my breath for what Ottawa can do, and I prefer to work in my community and make changes that I feel are tangible, and that's why I volunteer more with the provincial party.
So a lot of times there are transfer payments, and there's some funding and some programs federally, but they allow the work to be done on a provincial level, which are a little bit closer to the action.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that's a good way to go?
Yeah, I think I think Ottawa's most important lesson to learn is how not to interfere negatively and to trust provinces that they have a solution that has the best interests of their citizens in mind. I know we haven't had that recently in our province and the federal government, and so it's not an easy answer, and a lot of it is the constitution of the government and who has the power and which people are getting elected, and sort of the general consciousness of the country is people vote. We would like to think people vote based on their conscious and their rational decisions, but a lot of voting is, especially in the way that we do it, is based on, okay, well, what do I think the group is? I won't vote for this person because I don't want this person to win, and so I'll not pick my best choice because I am worried that's not going to have an effect. So we have, again, we're the product of the system that we use. It would be nice if we had a representative government. It would be nice if that had happened when the Prime Minister had promised it would. So again, we fight for things like that because those are necessary for the transition to a just government, to a government that actually represents people. And until we do that, it's going to be difficult to have a government that can work together because there's more incentive to be divisive than there is to work together. There's a great NDP candidate in Wolseley, and there's also another great Green Party candidate in Wolseley. And what sense does it make to have a backbench politician for another party that's just filling in space and not really making any policies, whereas we have potentially, two people who would definitely be pushing policies and definitely be working hard. And so it's frustrating to see that. We still work at it, and we can't stop, because then that's that validates the system that we're trying to change. So we have to still be part of it. It is taking things to Ottawa has its own bag of things, and even just even the institutions of Ottawa, there's been lots of controversy with the National Gallery of Canada lately, and I know a few things about how that works, and it's kind of a toxic environment, and that's something we would like to clean up.
So I'm guessing because you have family ties to Portage, you are familiar with Island Park.
Yeah, I've been here once or twice.
All right. So the lake in the middle of our city, and I'm doing some shameless promotion for everybody watching this on YouTube.
Come visit.
Absolutely beautiful place to live. And
Do you want me to get some shot?
oh no, we're good. We're good. And so the reason we're taking a drive through here is because sort of the yin to the yang of mental wellness, this helps to promote physical wellness. We've got Island Park, beautiful spot for disc golf, which is free.
Yeah.
We've got Splash Island. We have our multiplex. So 2 ice surfaces, as well as a swimming pool, fitness center, walking track. Tell me about physical activity, physical well-being of Canadians, and where the Green Party and you stand on that.
Yeah, that's. I mean, I wouldn't put much of a division between mental health and physical health. I mean, it's how it is affected and applied, but one contributes to the other. You know, if you're in a good mood, it's easier to go for a run, and if you're in a bad mood and go for a run, it's easier to be in a good mood. I mean, recreation is something that we will have to broadly establish as just as a right. I think we should have recreation as a right. I think that in a society where, you know, we are not wasteful and we're efficient with our time and our work, we will be able to produce more than we do now in less time. And what are people going to do? Well, wellness. We need facilities where people can go for walks and experience nature. We just got back from a tour at Echo, which it's a research lab forest, so you can go take a tour. You can learn about trees, and you get also the mental health benefits. Like, besides all the fresh air and the nice sounds, you get the mental health benefits of relaxation, and it's like a walking meditation. Or what did she call it? When we were walking in the pines. Anyway, so you get a lot of physical benefits and mental health benefits through recreation, and by establishing that as like one affordable, and so we need free parks and like disc golf courses, and we need to build this infrastructure so that people can use it, and so that we're ready for them to use it en masse once we've committed ourselves to having that kind of recreation time as a society. Like, I think we get so stressed up and we're so caught up in just performance and our jobs and our whatever that we don't get to spend enough time sitting on a bench and reading a book or whatever. I'm a big advocate for more free time. I think that the government should sponsor not only recreation time but also political time. I think we don't. One of the issues with politics is that it's hard for people to engage after their job and their kids and their whatever to really get in and understand what the issues are, understand what the parties are saying. We need to, for our health, for our longevity, for our sustainability, and for our ability to care for ourselves, I think we need to recognize that we have to take that time. I think it's an ounce of medicine is better than a pound of cure. And these are the cheap investments relatively. Like the things that government spends money on compared to this is peanuts. Like fund libraries to the max, fund parks to the max. They will get used. They are resources, and they will contribute to the physical, the mental health, just the quality of life. I mean, that's like the easiest, most cost-effective way to improve quality of life is to have free spaces, to have activities, especially for kids. Like swimming classes and bike lessons and trail riding and all that stuff should be free. We should provide it because the cost down the road, the cost preventions down the road are are astronomical. We will be healthier. We'll think healthier. We'll make better decisions for our own lives. But you know, we're sort of caught in this situation because there's all these things we want, and we're trying to build all these things, and we kind of, you know, we forget to stop and smell the roses sometimes.
Yeah, so I agree with you. I think that enhancing the mental health of Canadians, the physical health of Canadians, as well as intellectual, right? Connecting back to nature, having time to think and reflect and slow down instead of going so fast is really important. I think that's something that is very attractive about Canada, definitely Manitoba, and I think that's fantastic. So coming up right away, and this, you were telling me that you're just here as part of an earlier tour, National Residential School Museum, get that right? It's part of Long Plain First Nation development here, called Kishkimakwa.
Okay.
And what I'm interested to know about is, tell me about Truth and Reconciliation. How can we, where does it fit? What are we doing? What can we do better?
Well,
Truth and Reconciliation.
Yeah, what can we do better? Like most of it, we're desperately behind on fulfilling or completing the calls to reconciliation. So I mean, we got to get over this like institutional fear that this is somehow going to collapse our society, that like the economy is going to suffer, that, you know, like this is how we heal. It's been laid out how we heal. We just have to do those things. So I mean, we have to, as a government, we would have to put the fire to the heels of people who are not doing those things, incentivize and celebrate the people that are, and yeah, just do the work. I mean, the path is laid out. It's not an impossible task. It's not even that difficult, and it's not going to do anything but improve the relationships between Canada and Indigenous people, improve our community relationships, and, you know, if we're lucky, develop some kind of understanding of these principles that this land has been lived with for centuries, you know, millennia even, and be a little more aware of our impacts, and, you know, as a settler society, this is just us owning up to treaties. Like this is us fulfilling those legal documents that we as settlers signed a long time ago.
So it'd be fair to say that you don't feel that the treaties that were originally signed and agreed to have been honored by the government?
No. No.
No, they haven't, or
no, they have not.
Okay.
The ways that has not happened is a bit of a longer story and a bit frustrating to talk about. But
so let's start with the truth part of Truth and Reconciliation, because according to Senator Sinclair, that's where it starts, right? So what might that look like, or what would you be hoping, should you be the successful candidate, to communicate to Ottawa?
Yeah, well, so I mean, it's not my truth. Like, I mean, the history of residential schools is part of my existence now. It's part of who I am as a Canadian citizen and as a settler. It's elevating those voices who are speaking truth. It's empowering people to speak the truth, and I mean, it's standing up to misinformation when it happens. To, you know, shut down garbage rhetoric and you know, this and that. So it's to amplify the truth, and understand the truth and the history and the effects. But it's, you know, it's not an instant process to change minds, and changing minds about what the truth is kind of what our core contention is. I mean, there are a lot of people who are still, you know, hold to the monarchy and think that it was all well and good and in good intentions, and you know, it's hard to maintain that when you look at the facts, when you find the truth, but when someone else holds to a different truth, that's not an argument that generally goes anywhere.
Okay.
So, but I mean, truth wins out in the end. I think that schools, education is adopting it. There are these people are getting into the education system and being able to speak truth in an educational setting, in an institutional setting. So we just have to keep doing it more until it is the truth, until it is a curriculum of truth.
So that we actually just came out of the space that that Long Plain First Nation owns, called Kishkimakwa. Arrowhead Development. It's phenomenal. Beautiful houses. We drove through a couple of neighborhoods. They have commerce there. They've got stores. They have office space. They have a museum. Really great asset to our city. They are not immune to labor shortages, much like the rest of our city. If you're looking for a job, move to Portage, Prairie. We can get you employed.
Okay.
We've got industry. We've got everything. So my question is, what do you think needs to happen? So there's, of course, opportunities for Canadians to be employed. How are we going to address the labor shortage that isn't just in Manitoba or Portage la Prairie, but across our nation? And where does our federal government fit into that?
Well, so there's part of the labor shortage, I think, is part of a transition that we're seeing in the workforce, in the kind of work that is happening. It's a problem that we've had for a while. This is not something new that we're trying to find people, trying to incentivize opening up job markets. Part of it for this area is, come live in this beautiful community, and your standard of life will be X, and we will, you'll put up with whatever job because it's so great to live here, and the job seems like.
I'll be a bit more specific. I don't disagree with anything you're saying.
Okay.
What I'm wondering about is immigration. So
I was going to get to that.
Okay, then I will shut up and I'll let you speak.
Yeah, part of what we need to accomplish with immigration is, accomplish job readiness for people that are coming. That has always been a driver for Canada to, meet all of its industry requirements and all of its labor requirements, all its building requirements. So it's tailored training. So we need to be, again, sensitive to the cultures that it's coming from and the education that happens there, and that we are proactive in integrating people into the community.
Awesome. I'm going to kind of launch off of that. So a good friend of mine who is involved with immigration had told me once the best place to have a heart attack at that time, this is a few years ago in Portage, was a Dairy Queen, because there were doctors and nurses all new to Canada, but they had a lot of problems transferring their credentials to meet Canadian standards. Can we do a better job of this, and what would that look like?
Yeah, I think this applies not to just like economic immigration, and I've had some experiences recently with some of my mom's friends who are trying to bring people back into Canada, and it seems we have, there's a lingering xenophobia that if we're letting these people in, we're somehow changing the composition of what Canada is. And I think that's ridiculous. Like Canada is made off of all people from around the world. Like that's.
I'm pretty sure your parents and my parents were immigrants.
My dad,
at some point.
Yeah, my dad was
like
not born in this
line.
country. And none of my grandparents were. I'm a 1.5 generation Canadian. So this idea is just, I think, absurd. That's what I've always grown up thinking Canada was this place that was able to celebrate other ideas, other cultures, other people. So yeah, it's I mean, I don't know about the bureaucracy of the federal government. I don't know who's in charge of what and how much of their personal ideas inform, which forms get stamped and which ones don't. But that's, I think, a necessary change in the culture of government, that we have to understand that, we can't, even, whatever your opinions are about people, just for the sake of keeping this whole thing going, we need to do this stuff, and we need to do it consciously and conscientiously. So for self-preservation, we have to get over that. And also, if we want to be decent neighbors to each other, we also have to have that as a something that comes from government, that we can look up to government and say, hey, yes, we are this diverse country. We do know how to have people be part of us without having to change their whole identities. We want to embrace their identities, and we know that we are stronger when their identities are added to the mix. So yeah, we, federal government, big shots, talking big game. But again, it's that's the culture, and that's something that has got to change if we're even just going to keep up with what we have. That's just maintenance. This is not anything spectacular. This is just good governance.
Okay. And we're at the end of our time.
All right.
So I want to thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Thanks for the tour.
I enjoyed our time. I enjoyed our tour.
Yeah. Wow.
And that's that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, guy.